Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, I watched the final episode of Picard. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't as disappointing as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't as problematic as I thought it was going to be. I actually enjoyed, on some level, some of the scenes. I feel they did a much better job, and I just realised I forgot to check who actually wrote the episode. Damn it. Um, doesn't matter. It's not really a critique of their writing or the direction anyway. It's really just my thoughts on it and how I felt about it. The story wasn't that complicated, which is fine. Basically, Narek, who's running around, goes back to the Borg cube, and we get a couple of nice shots of it, half in the water, half on the land, or whatever. Basically, he goes back to his sister. He tries to coordinate with her because obviously they are still determined to destroy the Romulans, not the Romulans, the synths, and stop them from communicating with the artificial intelligence from the future, the other dimension, wherever it's coming from. So he does that, and he leaves her there because he needs her to help him coordinate things, weapons and stuff. So Narek goes to Picard's ship, and he basically literally throws stones at the ship to get their attention because he needs their help. So they begrudgingly agree to that, and Eldor follows him back and wants to kill him but doesn't, because he still hates him for killing Hugh, and I guess we all hate him for killing Hugh. I really don't think Hugh needed to die. He could have lived and helped Seven to go on, freeing XBs. So they sort of talk and they work out, blah, 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 we can do this, we can do that, and they come up with a plot to put a bomb in a soccer ball and to basically take Narek in as, look, we caught Narek, this person who killed one of your people. So they use him as a Trojan horse, basically, and have a bomb in the ball. And this is all sort of worked out. And then they're sitting around in a campfire scene outside the ship. And it's very Lord of the Rings. Because they're talking about mythology, and Nerek's talking about how basically mythology and all this stuff. And Rios mentions Ragnarok and Judgment Day. And it's all very religious, and it doesn't really fit in Star Trek and fit in Starfleet, and it's a bit weird and feels very Lord of the Rings. So Raffi and Rios magically fix the ship with their magical device that they were given in the other episode. I can't remember who gave it to them, and it's really just ridiculous. He literally just imagines the repairs that need to be done, and the device just magically changes and fixes the ship. Now, this is science fantasy. This is not science fiction, this is not Star Trek. It has no place in Star Trek. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. We don't want it. There are other shows that are all about science fantasy and fantasy, and it's not Star Trek. It's not Lord of the Rings. And it just really grates and was cringy. I mean, the actors do a good job. The script isn't badly written. It's just the idea, the concept, the theme, just all of it just is wrong. So they fix the ship, and I mean, they didn't need to create this device to fix the ship. They just didn't have to write the ship damaged so bad. I mean, it's just, they create a problem and then they resolve it in the most ridiculous way when they could have just not created the problem in the first place. It's just, none of this needs to happen. So, okay, so we get to the point where basically Girardi, the other sort of several things happening. Girardi basically breaks Picard out using the eye of the synth. She literally pulls it out and then uses it to get into the other area to get Picard out. They get back onto the ship. Picard actually remembers from watching Rios and just his experience, of course, how to actually pilot the ship. So they leave in the ship. So while they are up in space, the crew gets inside the compound. They basically get the bomb. They do everything, but Soji catches the bomb in her hand when Rios kicks it, and she throws it up in the air and it explodes in the sky. So that has failed. So they are left at her mercy, and Picard is up in space, and they send the orchids up, and they use the orchids to hide behind. But this is after they use the magic device again to create a way to replicate the ship in some sort of hologram, but with warp trails, so the Romulans won't be able to tell which ship is the real ship. And they're basically trying to stall the Romulans. So they stall the Romulans for a while with the multiple ships, and then the orchids come up and they hide behind the orchids, and it's just a big mess of orchid pieces when they're shooting through them and destroying them, and that stalls things long enough for Starfleet to show up. And unfortunately, I actually saw a couple of photos from other people's inconsiderate, spoilery articles and things, and I saw Riker in uniform and knew that he came and saved the day, which is what we were hoping, because he did mention that reserve activation clause thing, sort of thing. So he shows up with a fleet of, I guess, 100 ships. I can't remember they said how many were actually going to. She was Admiral fucking Hubris. Was going to send a whole bunch of ships. They showed up. They got there in time, and they faced off the Romulans, because the Romulans, of course, got there all intact, all together, and they took forever to set off their giant device, like the whole "we're going to count down to destroying you." It was very overdone and took too long and got dragged out and stalled and delayed and all that stuff, like all MacGuffins and stuff, and it's just but then we get to the good part. I mean, Patrick Stewart pulled out the acting. He pulled out the Patrick Stewart. Basically, he contacts Soji and says, "Look, don't do this. Starfleet is here. We're protecting you. We are not the enemy. We are not going to destroy you. Believe me, I believe in you. I have faith in you. Let's save each other." Obviously, the scene is much better written and much better delivered than that, but that's the gist of it. And she has faith. She knows he's telling the truth. She smashes the device right as we see Control coming out of this little red portal. So they did link it to Discovery, but not in the way I feared. I thought the Federation was destroying itself, and that would lead to the future that they are in Discovery. But we see some hope. Basically, the Romulans are shown to be wrong. They are not the destroyer. They choose to not destroy humanity. The Romulans are forced to see the truth, see reality, get past the myth and all their misconceptions, see that the Sims are not evil, and back down. And Riker is Riker, and he's like, F off, bitch, basically. Back down, they do. They're escorted out of the quadrant, basically. And then, unfortunately, Picard dies. He was having problems the whole time with his Ironic syndrome, and he collapses on the ship. They beam him down to the planet, and he dies amongst all these people who he doesn't really know. I mean, he knows Raffi in the story, but Riker basically just says, "Look, I said I wouldn't stop you, but I didn't say I wouldn't help you. I didn't say I'd let you go in on your own and do this." So, he explained to Picard. They speak. It's a very sweet scene. They speak. He leaves. And then he collapses. Then he beams down, and then he dies. And his last words basically are, "You're right, Raffi," basically. And he dies. And it's his image dead at his age. I found it really disturbing to see him like that. Yeah. And it was very sad, and I had a moment of, wow, this character I've been watching for all these years is dead. I never really liked Picard, but this Picard at the end, I liked him. He was different. He wasn't afraid of expressing himself and being emotional, and telling people how he felt and that he cared about them. So it was upsetting. And then everyone mourns him, of course. Eleanor, of course, cries like a baby, and Raffi comforts him like a mother. So I guess she's going to heal that relationship within herself with him, and he perhaps will find the mother he never had, so maybe they're going to have that relationship in the next season. Rios and Seven seem to be consoling their own issues. She basically says, I basically said because I forgot to mention Seven. She has a couple of moments of, why am I here? What is my worth? What is my use? Why don't I just kill myself? I got nowhere. And she has talking about that with Elnor, and he says, well, I'd miss you if you left. And she shows up. She finds the Romulan in the Borg cube, because she apparently didn't beam out, or she beamed back in. I don't know what she's doing in there, but basically she kills her. They have a bitch fight, which we, as soon as she saw them two, it's like, okay, they're just here for a hot chick bitch fight. Okay, so they have it, and she kicks her off down into, she dies like the Emperor, so we guess she's dead. No explosion, she just falls. And Seven says later on, I sort of said I'd never kill someone again. I wouldn't kill someone who I believed deserved it, even if it felt wrong that they were alive. I said I sort of wouldn't do this again. Just like Rio said, I said I wouldn't get attached to someone and watch them die again, and I did. So at first I thought they were going to be a couple, then they're just sort of kindred spirits, I guess. And I think I'm going to run out of time, so I might have to stop this here and do a second video. I don't think I'm going to have enough here. But basically, all that ends, and we get to the big scene.